You know, I just am aware that we're coming up about half past the hour. So for those of you who are logging on or tuning in, this is the headline none of us wanted to deliver, or even, as Anthony just said, expected to deliver. Dolly Parton has passed away at 80. You know, we show country music legend, but we could literally fill that screen up over and over and over with all of her accolades. In fact, let's really quickly go now to the announcement that hit social media from a member of her trusted family and listen to that and share that together.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian Seaver, son of Cassie Parton, and I'm representing the Parton and Owens family today, announcing the passing of my Aunt Dolly Rebecca Parton Dean, sister, sis, Aunt Granny to one generation and Gigi to the next. This video announcement is something Dolly asked of me years ago, before I fully absorbed it as a future reality. As her head of security for more than 2 decades, a role my father Larry held before me, I have imagined the heaviness of this moment, but haven't truly felt it until now. It is an honor that is mixed with absolute pride and great sadness. But sadness lies with us, not with Dolly. Dolly has lived in the light and is in the arms of Jesus, surely met by Carl, her parents, and countless others who have watched her and longed for her to meet them in the heavens. I first went on the road with Dolly as a kid, getting a taste of the road life in the early 1980s. Dolly opened doors not just for me, but for her entire family to reach the potential we didn't even know was possible. Dolly also opened doors for generations of singers, songwriters, musicians, and dreamers from every walk of life and across every continent. By her example, we believed that anything was possible. She never saw a door she couldn't open, and the doors she opened made and changed history. My family and I have shared a lifetime of beautiful memories with Dolly, but so have you. She has always been on your television, your record player, your CD, and on your phone playlist, becoming an extended part of your family, whether you liked it or not. Our family and the team she has entrusted with her legacy will work diligently to ensure her spirit will live with us forever. Dolly was a farmer, just like her daddy. He farmed the soil, she farmed songs and happiness. Dolly called me and said she wants to rest in a beautiful bed of plush cotton because after a life wearing heavy rhinestones, she finally deserves to be comfortable and have some rest. Rest in peace, Aunt Dolly, Aunt Granny, Gigi. May God bless Dolly Parton, and may God bless you all. She will always love you.
All right, so that is from her nephew, who, by the way, and I'm a huge student and fan of Dolly Parton, she brought him on stage in the 1980s when he was just a youngster to breakdance at a concert. And from there, he was a part of her entourage and a much-loved part of her family. She kept people close, but that was a spirit that really resonated no matter whether you knew her or not.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, going back to this whole idea, I mean, of how startled we all are. I mean, I was struck by, it was back in June she actually opened basically a gas station. It was called Dolly's Tennessee Travel Shop.
Right.
And I think when I saw that, I thought, okay, maybe she's doing better.
I did too.
But she had just missed another opening recently, and so that raised some concerns in my mind. But as I say, a big part of it is this constant presence in American culture for going back now to the 60s, and she has remained constantly relevant. She's reinvented herself. She's expanded her business. She's expanded her music. And it's an extraordinary accomplishment, what she did, both as an artist and as a business person.
Not a scandal, not a controversy. In fact, the heartbeat of her entire life was uniting us, a masterclass. You know, I constantly, as I feel sad about the divisions in our country, reference Dolly Parton as a true north. Somebody once said to me, look, her Q scores, and just to break that down if you don't know what that is, that's a way in media that people sort of measure influence. Dolly Parton's Q scores are super high, above many, many mega superstars.
Yeah. But if there was one thing everyone could agree on, is loving Dolly Parton. And you talk about the contributions she makes. To me, one of the most significant ones was actually the Imagination Library, which she started.
Absolutely.
And she was deeply committed to getting books in the hands of kids all over the country and sending them to, I think it was on a monthly basis. She showed up again and again to further that cause, and she really believed in it. And I think it made a huge difference from a lot of people. It was a way that she gave back. And she did it, as I say, she was deeply committed to it.
Right. And she knew that for every donation, there was a young person who literally had a book in their hands,
Yes.
pages to turn,
Yep.
stories to read, and then the encouragement. Because let's remember this, Dolly Parton was a lover of words. I mean, if I were to really canonize what she is, she knew words, loved words, and felt like words nudge the world a little bit if you use them in the right order.
It was interesting when I talked to her down in. I was struck by a couple of things. One, which was actually in the obituary, where she talked about, she believing in her own talent. But the other thing is she knew she was a really good songwriter. She knew she had a way with words. And when I was talking about everything, when we were walking around Dollywood and she was showing everything off, I said, what gets you to all this? And she said it was songwriting. She said none of this would have happened without songwriting. I think it was more than that. She was incredibly determined and ambitious to be she knew she could be a star, and she achieved it. I mean, it's interesting because her big break was when she got on Porter Wagoner's show in the late 60s, and he was a huge star. She came on kind of as his sidekick, but she started to become the star. And
yes, she did.
I Will Always Love You was actually written to Porter Wagoner, when she basically told him, I'm leaving you.
Yeah.
And he tried to get her to stay, but it was time.
Yeah, and the story of her experience with Porter Wagoner is so touching to me because, look, it was not an easy period when she left Porter Wagoner. There was litigation that followed.
Yep.
And yet, in the end, Dolly Parton was there when Porter Wagoner died.
Yep.
She went back, and despite all of the division, wanted to hold the hand of and comfort the man whose career was woven with hers.
Yeah. Well, he changed her life. She knew it. But she also knew that she outgrew it at a certain point and had to go her own way.
Yeah, a masterclass for so many things, right? Music, how to live. I also think about the fact that, she met kings, presidents, princes, world leaders. She was right up there in the power structure of our country and our world. And yet everything she did seemed to be providing an on-ramp and access for somebody else to come behind her.
Yeah, and there aren't too many artists or cultural figures who, when they walk into a room, the energy changes. And with her, I saw it. The place I saw it most strikingly was at the Newport Folk Festival. I think it was I want to say it was 2019,
right,
when she made a surprise appearance with Brandi Carlile at the end of the Newport Folk Festival. She literally, they hid her under a blanket when they brought her in the back. And she walked out on stage and the place erupted, absolutely erupted. And that's the kind of love, she created. And as you pointed out, the sort of unity she created wherever you were from. You didn't have to be a Southerner. You didn't have to be a country fan. You loved Dolly Parton.
Well, we all felt like she belonged to us. When the greatest among us pass, we feel like they belong to us. And that's the true genius of artistry done right, is it not? Yeah. To make it so that your art is accessible, your lyrics, your language, whatever it is, your music, your craft, is something that taps into that common resonance.
One of the other things that really struck me about Dolly was she was always growing, even though she kept doing the things she loved, kept writing songs. And I think by some estimates, she's written something like 3,000 songs, which is an extraordinary number, 25 number ones, 100 million records sold.
Right.
I mean, all of that. But that's only a fraction of what she did. When you consider the film career and the business career and creating Dollywood sort of, out in the middle of Tennessee and willing that into becoming, a major cultural force. And the book program. And here she was working on a Broadway show. She never rested. She could have again and again, and she never did.
She was a creative and a creator, and
Yes.
It was, I think, one of the hallmarks of who she was and who she will remain to be forever in world history. And that is somebody who got up every morning and started creating because it just was a function of who she was. She wrote songs I remember a story of her on a tour bus, and she was in the middle of dieting and really trying hard. And she said her friends were down the hall a little bit, and they were having so much fun. And she channeled that into another one of her great songs. And then, I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Jolene.
Yes.
Everybody knows the song of Jolene. And, you know, there's the true reason for the song, and then there's the myth behind the song Jolene. But regardless, it is also one of those great American songs.
I think one of the most covered country songs out there. I mean,
in all genres.
Yeah, in all genres. I asked her, because I had a suspicion, but I asked her when we were down in Dollywood, I said, do you get a thrill when you write a great line? And she just lit up, and she said, "Oh my goodness!" She goes, "How did you know?" She said, when I wrote 9 to 5, and I wrote the line, pour myself a cup of ambition. She was like, "Oh my,"
on her fingernails.
Yeah, exactly. And she said it was so exciting. And I don't know, that for me, as someone who loves music, I love it when you see a songwriter get excited by their own work.
Right.
It's just.
Well, she lives in flow state all the time. You talk about what you have to do to sort of get there to access the lyrics. Dolly Parton, I saw many interviews where she sort of felt like the lyrics came to her.
Yeah.
And how she would wake up in the middle of the night and she'd write down a lyric. Yeah. And yet she was a student of her own life. She paid attention to her life, and the experiences she had would inform. But I also love that she put on no airs, as her people from the Smoky Mountains likely taught her. And she was very honest also about some of her struggles. I don't know if you've listened, Anthony, to Dolly Parton's America, the great podcast series that is just phenomenal. But Dolly Parton was very open about how she also had dark periods in her life, loss in her life, and how those losses and dark periods informed her lyrics. Whenever I've been down, I turn on, I can see the light of a clear blue morning. Yeah. And I know the deepness of the depth of the struggles that informed those lyrics, the light of a clear blue morning.
Yeah. She was a remarkable lyricist. I was flipping through the book of lyrics before I interviewed her, and I just was, there were some songs I actually didn't even know that well, and I was like, wow, why haven't I heard of this? But it's because there are so many great songs of hers that are out there that you can't get to all of them. It's just, the catalog is extraordinary. And what I also love is that she's as a big part of her career, she's always been willing to lift other artists up with her, right? And embrace them and support them. And it's not every artist does that.
No, they don't. She created space for creatives because she believed in the craft. And, you just saw evidence of that recently with Taylor Swift donating, I'm going off the top of my head, all you Swifties out there, you can correct me on social media, but I believe $1 million to Dolly Parton's philanthropy, and so many celebrities credit her. Jamie, do we still have you on the phone to talk about this? Jump on in.
I'm here.
Let's get around this
Listening
campfire.
to the conversation and enjoying Anthony's perspective, especially. Anthony, I have a thought, because you have really sat down with her, and I always looked at her as like the biggest person in the room on television, when she'd come on talk shows, when she'd be in concert. And I only got to be in close proximity with her one time many, many years ago. But were you struck by how tiny this person is?
Little.
I mean, tiny person, right?
Right.
Yeah. It's, well, any Dolly appearance was always a production. I mean, it's not like any other interview you sit down for. It's lit a certain way. There's a team around her. There was a team around her that prepared you for, her coming. But as soon as she walked in the room, she was just Dolly. And I think in some ways she was playing a part. She knew what people wanted to see. But in her case, the part was actually her. So it was an easy part to play. But she was one of those, it's a little like talking to Cher when you know that Cher is playing Cher, and she knows that people love Cher. But it's also her. I'm struck by the two of them. They're both the kind of person who rocks in the room and just people go insane. Dolly, she's one of the best interviews you could ever do, because first of all, she was incredibly funny, she was incredibly quick, and incredibly smart, but also very humble and very simple in so many ways, in spite of all the production around her. It was a very interesting contrast, because you come in and it is a production, it's Dolly Parton, but she feels like the same person, she probably was when she was a kid.
Right.